It's just amazing how little we need to do to make really effective trees. But our head will try and make us do loads, make it busy, and then it becomes stressful and ineffective instead. So hello everyone, it's Toby from Toby's Urban Sketch, and today I'm doing a really quick tips and tricks video about sketching trees or bushes or flowers and all of the above, these kind of green objects which actually are surprisingly common. As we walk around our urban scenes, you'll find, especially in spring and summer, they are filled with trees. And trees aren't, let me say something stupid, trees aren't buildings, so the same techniques might feel like they don't apply, but they do. So in just 3 really quick steps, how do we get our trees down? Well, firstly, it's the bigger picture. When we look at trees, we think, oh look, it's an oak tree, so we have to draw 1,000,000 leaves which are shaped something like this. But that's not what we actually see. That's not what our mind sees when we see, say, an oak tree. What our mind sees is it sees a shape. So we start off with just a really simple shape. And already, just like that, our mind knows it's a tree. But we can go a stage further. So in step 1, instead of just doing a shape, we do a shape with a bit of texture. And that texture is taking a little bit of a sort of hint from the shape of the leaves. So we kind of imply these leaf-like shapes around the edge of our shape. And thus we have this kind of texture-filled loose shape, which even more resembles to our mind, without any sort of effort, a tree. And now we have this lovely flat illustrative tree, and that is step 1. Step 2 is where we start applying a bit more texture and a bit of shadow. Why is shadow important, I hear you say? Well look, if we take a simple sphere, well, it's not a sphere, is it? It's just a circle. How do we make it a sphere? Well, through shadow. So by making one side dark and increasingly dark towards the edges, suddenly this 2D object feels 3D. And it's the same for a cube as a really simple other example. If we have a cube, actually what we want is to have a bit of shadow here, a lot of shadow on this side, and suddenly instead of just being a flat shape, this cube has entered reality. Now the next key part about shadow is shadow is also there. It's also on the floor, and by applying it to the floor we end up having a shadow that interacts with the surroundings, and it places our object. So how do we do that in our trees? What is step 2 in our trees? Well, think of our leaf texture and just suggest that kind of texture and suggest it all over. So we do have these leaves all over. So now we have an object with texture, but we start to suggest more of these textures closer to the shadow. So if the light is coming down here, the shadow's over here. So we have more and more textures over on the left side. And we do the same for the trunk. So the trunk's going to be like up and down barky textures, isn't it? And at the bottom, maybe a few little sprigs of grass just to connect. So this doesn't feel real, does it? But a connection where we're using texture to connect to the ground does. So use those little grass-like textures to connect the tree to the ground. And then of course a little bit of a shadow. And just with some real simple hatching, suddenly this tree is connected to the ground and interacting with the world. And that is it, that is step 2. And step 3, I hear you ask, what on earth is step 3? Well, step 3 is where we start adding our colour. So if I just got a lovely bit of green I've mixed earlier, so it's got a bit of cobalt blue, a bit of Hansa yellow, and I've just added a bit of Cascade green. And all we do is we apply that in a loose wash. And I leave lots of white, especially up here. Now having done that, we can add a loose wash into the trunk as well. Let's just use a shadow colour, so I'm going to use Moonglow. And that shadow can come down as well. And look at this lovely green reflecting down into the shadow. And now we wait for it to dry. And as if like magic, it's pretty much dry. And what we can do, we can take maybe a smaller brush, maybe the same brush, The same green, just a little bit richer, and we can apply a bit more texture and a bit more shadow. Just little dibs and dabs and dots in there. And suddenly our tree has got a lot more life and a lot more shape. And if we think of this as being just part of an urban scene, part of a scene, then just think how much more alive and lively your simple trees will be just by following a really simple process. If we want, we could just bring in a bit more shadow as well. Maybe give a little bit of that grass some life to the sides here. Maybe even a few little splashes just to suggest some leaves flying around. And if you wanted some flowers, well, it's still all about the bigger picture. So maybe we just pop little dibs and dabs of colour down here. We've got some little flowers surrounding our lovely tree with a lovely little grass verge around it as well. And there you go, 3 steps, 3 really simple steps to capture the idea of a tree. Taking it from simple shape to a texture-filled shape where we apply a lot of shadow to some simple colours which really just work with our line work to create something which feels more real, more fun, but doesn't take any stress. If you fancy a more in-depth look at this subject, then I've got a Skillshare all about trees, bushes and flowers. Check the link below in the comment and description. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.